references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on qresearch or qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Board's January 23, 2026, record cold and heavy snow are gripping much of the country, with forecasters warning of a dangerous Arctic blast sweeping across most of the United States. Wind chills are expected to plunge well below zero, ice will threaten travel, and power grids will be under strain in dozens of states. Authorities are urging families to prepare for possible outages and check on vulnerable neighbors as this historic cold wave settles in over the coming days. At Davos, world leaders gathered for the World Economic Forum's Global Economic Outlook session, but the tone was tense. Trump officials pressed Europe to open markets and drop green regulations they say are strangling growth, while European leaders warned about trade wars and instability. Markets are watching closely as any shift on tariffs, energy policy, or central bank coordination could reshape the world economy in 2026. President Trump used his Davos appearance to hammer home a simple message. When America's economy grows, the world benefits. He promoted strong borders, energy dominance, and tariffs aimed at protecting U.S. workers from what he calls unfair foreign practices. Supporters say the speech put global elites on notice that the U.S. will no longer carry the burden of a rigged system, while critics in Europe worry about escalating trade tensions. A centerpiece of Trump's Davos agenda is the new Board of Peace, now being structured as an international body. The concept is to tie economic deals and security guarantees to concrete steps toward peace, instead of endless open-ended commitments. Allies are curious but cautious, wondering how much leverage Washington will wield and which conflicts might be tackled first under this new framework. Canada is now out in the cold diplomatically after being removed from Trump's Board of Peace. The decision follows Trump's long-running clash with former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney, who admitted the old global financial system was partially false. The White House is signaling that any country seen as undermining Trump's economic reset, especially on energy and climate, risks losing a seat at the table. Greenland is once again at the center of geopolitical maneuvering. Trump allies are touting a framework deal with NATO partners that would expand U.S. access to Arctic routes and resources, even as Denmark is criticized as unable to defend the island alone. Supporters see this as a strategic masterstroke that secures sea lanes, minerals, and missile defense, while European leaders worry it could fracture the alliance. That Arctic push comes on top of renewed interest in what the U.S. has already built under Greenland's ice. Analysts are revisiting Cold War projects, from secret tunnels to radar networks, and asking how they can be modernized for today's missile and satellite threats. The Arctic, once treated as a frozen backwater, is now becoming a front line in the struggle over energy, shipping, and great power competition. Trump's tariff policy is reshaping the world's trade map. At Davos, business leaders admitted that multinational supply chains built over decades are being rerouted toward countries that accept U.S. terms on security and currency transparency. Supporters argue this finally punishes Beijing and other bad actors, while some European and Asian officials warn that the new system is unstable, fragmented, and harder for smaller nations to navigate. A joint statement from Secretary Kennedy and Secretary Rubio confirmed that the United States has now exited the World Health Organization. The administration says the WHO mishandled past pandemics and allowed political pressure from China to shape policy. Supporters see the move as reclaiming national sovereignty over health decisions. Opponents warn it could weaken global disease surveillance and leave smaller nations without coordination. Trump is also declaring victory on TikTok. A new deal shifts control of the platform's U.S. operations to a consortium of American investors and Trump-aligned backers, with the White House calling it a win for free speech and data security. The president credits TikTok as a key channel for his surge with younger voters and says this agreement proves you can confront Beijing's tech power without shutting down popular apps. On the global stage, Trump announced America's intention to bid for the 2035 World Expo, backing Miami as the host city. The administration argues that a Florida Expo would showcase American innovation, energy independence, and secure trade routes to Latin America. If the bid succeeds, it would bring massive construction, tourism, and foreign investment to the region and offer Trump a high-profile legacy project beyond his term. Back home, mortgage rates have fallen to around 3-year lows, even as the Fed keeps its benchmark rate elevated. Trump officials argue that markets are responding to their push for lower regulation, cheaper energy, and tariff-driven reshoring. For families, the practical impact is more affordable home purchases and refinancing opportunities, though tight housing inventory and high prices are still squeezing many first-time buyers. Former Trump advisor Stephen Miller is accusing the Biden administration of presiding over the largest wave of child smuggling in human history. He points to record illegal border crossings and reports of minors being exploited by cartels and traffickers. Miller contrasts that with Trump's policies, arguing that strict enforcement and Remain in Mexico sharply reduced the cartel's profits and kept more children out of harm's way. In Arizona, Democrat Attorney General Chris Mays stirred outrage by suggesting state residents could be justified in shooting masked ICE agents under self-defense laws. Critics say that kind of rhetoric endangers federal officers who are enforcing immigration law and sends a dangerous signal to violent protesters. The comment is now fueling calls for federal protections for ICE and sharper limits on state officials who undermine federal operations. ICE itself is back in the spotlight as Trump allies loudly declare, "I stand with ICE." After years of local non-cooperation and sanctuary policies, the administration is rewarding jurisdictions that work closely with federal officers and shaming those that refuse detainers. The message is simple: help remove criminal illegal aliens, or face the loss of federal funding and public exposure for putting politics ahead of safety. Vice President J.D. Vance traveled to Minneapolis and said the Insurrection Act is not currently needed, but remains on the table. He praised rank-and-file officers who want to help ICE but are blocked by political leaders. The White House is clearly signal-boosting local law enforcement, while warning mayors and governors that if they continue to shield violent rioters and foreign criminals, federal power can and will be used. Vance also addressed a viral story about a 5-year-old child caught up in an ICE raid. He stressed that the child was never the target. Agents were pursuing an illegal alien father who ran from arrest in freezing conditions. Vance argued that leaving minors in dangerous environments or allowing criminal parents to flee is more cruel than enforcing the law, and said the administration will keep prioritizing safety over optics. On Capitol Hill, Speaker Mike Johnson hailed passage of the FY 2026 spending package as a step toward restoring fiscal sanity. The bill includes trims to woke federal programs, boosts for defense and border enforcement, and limits on funding for international bodies that undermine U.S. sovereignty. Conservatives are split on whether the cuts go far enough, but many see this as the first real course correction after years of runaway spending. The American Academy of Pediatrics, long considered a central voice in child health, is now facing a sweeping RICO lawsuit. Children's Health Defense accuses the group of participating in a decades-long fraud by promoting vaccine safety claims they say were not fully supported by evidence. AAP denies the allegations, but the case could force discovery into communications between medical groups, drug companies, and federal agencies.
At shop.isitwaya.com, everything you buy supports Qn.top, the place where people talk freely no matter what. Check out our Qn Honey Pot, a jar of yummy honey that's as strong as your voice. Put it on toaster and tea. It's not just honey, it's freedom in every bite. Then there's Qn Butter, a smooth handmade skin cream that makes you feel good while you fight for what's right. Awesome wooden pieces for display only. Hang them up or set them out. They're for showing off Qn's tough spirit. Want to help even more? Get a proto membership. So go to shop.isitwaya.com now and grab some goodies. Help Qn.top keep free speech alive, and let's keep the ideas flowing loud and free.
All reports can be found on qresearch or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Board's January 23, 2026. In Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton has launched an investigation into vaccine-related financial incentives. His office is probing whether pharmaceutical firms and insurers offered hidden bonuses or kickbacks to doctors and hospitals for hitting vaccine targets in children. Paxton says he will not allow big pharma and big insurance to bribe medical providers. Critics argue the probe risks scaring families away from routine immunizations. Meanwhile, the FDA has recalled multiple over-the-counter medications tied to unsanitary conditions at a Minnesota distribution center. Inspectors reported contamination risks and poor quality controls at the facility, prompting a nationwide pullback of affected products. Families are being told to check lot numbers and discard suspect bottles, as regulators promise to tighten oversight of drug warehouses that had flown under the radar for years. Undercover video from James O'Keefe has sparked new questions about corporate influence over weather and climate policy. A BlackRock-linked figure at Davos is heard discussing spraying chemicals in the skies and manipulating rainfall, feeding public concern about secret geoengineering projects. Supporters of the investigation say this proves powerful firms are playing God with the environment. Defenders claim the comments are being taken out of context. In Australia, lawmakers have passed a sweeping new hate crimes law that critics say could send people to prison for criticizing Israel. Free speech advocates warn that the statute is so broad, ordinary political debate and religious teaching could be criminalized. The move is being watched around the world as a test case for how far Western governments will go in policing speech on the Middle East and other hot-button issues. The Feeding Our Future scandal in Minnesota took another turn as nonprofit leader Amy Bach pointed the finger at Democrat Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison. She claims state officials ignored red flags and then tried to shift blame once the alleged fraud surfaced. For taxpayers, the case raises hard questions about pandemic aid oversight, cozy ties between nonprofits and politicians, and who really benefited from billions in relief funds. A former TD Bank insider has pleaded guilty in a scheme that used ATMs to launder Colombian drug money. Prosecutors say the banker helped move millions through the system by exploiting weak internal controls and know-your-customer checks. The case highlights ongoing vulnerabilities in the banking sector, even as regulators boast about tougher anti-money laundering rules, and it raises new questions about major institutions turning a blind eye to dirty cash. In the Netherlands, thieves emptied the Doesburg Silver Museum in a brazen overnight heist. Hundreds of historic silver pieces vanished, many of them unique works tied to Dutch craft and religious history. Investigators suspect a highly organized gang with a shopping list for private collectors. The robbery adds to a wave of European precious metal thefts and will likely drive museums to rethink security for their most portable treasures. New reporting alleges the FBI quietly paid members of a self-styled sedition hunters network as confidential informants in January 6 cases. These activists, openly hostile to Trump and his supporters, helped identify suspects using online videos and facial recognition tools. Critics say paying such partisans undercuts any claim of neutrality and raises serious concerns about civil liberties, due process, and the Bureau's promised post-Russiagate reforms. At Purdue University, an unwritten policy has reportedly blocked many Chinese graduate students from admission in sensitive fields. Internal discussions show security officials worried about espionage and technology transfer, even as faculty raise concerns about discrimination and academic freedom. The story captures a broader shift. Universities are now on the front lines of the new Cold War with Beijing, whether they like it or not. In the Gulf, a regional firm has showcased what it calls the Middle East's first AI-powered drone swarm technology. Demonstrations show dozens of unmanned aircraft coordinating autonomously for surveillance and possible combat roles. Supporters say this will give allied militaries a cheaper edge against hostile forces. Critics warn it opens the door to less accountable warfare, with algorithms deciding how and when to strike. The U.S. Air Force says a Boeing 747-8 donated by Qatar is on track to enter service as an interim Air Force One this summer. The jet is undergoing heavy modifications for secure communications, missile defenses, and presidential accommodations. The gift has sparked ethics questions about foreign influence, but the White House insists it will be U.S. government property, not a personal perk, and points to recurring problems on the aging current fleet. Plane spotters are also tracking a Russian IL-96 aircraft flying in and out of Havana. fueling speculation about deeper Moscow-Cuba cooperation. Analysts note that Russia has been rebuilding ties to the island, from energy deals to possible military and intelligence projects. With Washington focused on Europe and the Middle East, critics warn the Kremlin may be quietly reestablishing a strategic foothold just 90 miles from Florida. In Washington, D.C., police responded to reports of a mass shooting at 16th Street and Military Road in Northwest. Early alerts from local media and citizen journalists described multiple victims with gunshot wounds and major road closures. The incident comes amid ongoing concern over violent crime in the nation's capital, prompting renewed debate over Trump's push to bring D.C. policing more directly under federal control. Minneapolis remains a flashpoint after violent attacks on a church and ongoing street unrest. Commentators citing DOJ sources say the first round of arrests was just an appetizer, with many more suspects expected to be identified and charged in the coming weeks. The White House amplified a stark warning graphic: "A storm is coming," underscoring its message that rioters, not police or parishioners, will face the full force of federal law. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is under fresh scrutiny after claims her net worth has soared above $30 million while on a public servant's salary. Conservative critics argue that this kind of rapid enrichment has become far too common in Washington, where insider access, book deals, and foreign connections can quietly make politicians wealthy. Omar denies any wrongdoing, but calls are growing for stricter transparency and bans on certain side deals. At Davos, BlackRock CEO and interim WEF co-chair Larry Fink was confronted by citizen journalists demanding answers on censorship, ESG mandates, and political influence. Fink refused to engage, relying on security to move him along, even as the forum's official theme touted a spirit of dialogue. The clash underscores growing public anger at unelected financial giants steering global policy while dodging basic accountability. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky used his Davos platform to lash out at weak European leaders, even as he admitted a peace deal is almost ready. His complaints about stalled aid and reluctance to confront Russia collided with war-weary voters across the continent. For many in Europe, the question now is less about slogans and more about whether continued funding, weapons, and sanctions actually bring peace any closer. Elon Musk sat down for a widely watched conversation at the World Economic Forum, touching on AI, robotics, energy, and free speech. He warned about overregulation that could kill innovation, but also called for clear rules on artificial intelligence and autonomous weapons. The event highlighted Musk's unusual position, a powerful Trump ally who still sits in the middle of debates over tech, censorship, and the future of work. In Minnesota, Magistrate Judge Douglas Micko reportedly refused to sign an arrest warrant for former CNN host Don Lemon in connection with recent unrest, while his wife serves as an assistant attorney general under Keith Ellison. The decision is fueling allegations of double standards, with critics saying ordinary protesters face aggressive charges, while well-connected media figures benefit from insider protection. A viral online poll is asking which religion is best equipped to handle the possibility that humanity is not alone in the universe. Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Judaism are all listed, and users are fiercely debating theology, prophecy, and extraterrestrial life. The conversation shows how questions about UFOs and unexplained phenomena have moved from the fringe into mainstream culture and even faith communities. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has issued a blunt message to Zelensky and NATO. "No matter how much you flatter me, we cannot support your war efforts." He called Ukraine's leadership desperate and argued that endless funding and weapons will ruin Europe. Orbán is doubling down on his image as the lone EU leader, openly challenging both Brussels and Kiev, while aligning himself more closely with Trump's push for negotiated peace.
Every voice matters. The power of free speech is more important than ever. Imagine a place where you can share your thoughts freely, explore new ideas, and engage in meaningful conversations anonymously. With online anonymity, you can express yourself without fear of judgment. It's about freedom, creativity, and connection. Join the conversation that matters. Embrace your voice. Celebrate your freedom. Visit 8kun.top today. That's 8kun.top.
That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.